You don't like getting involved in politics.
Good.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
Having minor technical issues, yes.
Are you in your office?
I am actually in my office. I'm trying to put helicopters away and all sorts of things because the ground crew decided they're
Cool.
working. Hello there. So please, just talk amongst yourselves. I'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes.
Do you want me to hold this for you?
Yeah, absolutely, John. You go for it.
I've got this, don't worry. You run on.
I'll go for everybody. Thank you.
Well, I can make air law fun.
You can sort it out.
Let's not talk about air law.
No.
That makes it simple enough, doesn't it? I'm getting text messages already. Oh, you look like you're in your normal home of ground school.
Yeah.
That virtual background.
No, that's the real deal. Yeah,
That's the real deal.
in the office. Yeah.
Hey, look at that.
Hey. Yeah. So it's kind of odd not having you here now. I'm sort of sitting here. Where is everybody?
Well, yeah.
This is just weird.
Well, if you sit there and Alan shows his pizza off, he'll at home.
Oh,
yeah.
He's got pizza, has he?
Yeah, he's got Domino's.
Oh.
Yeah, see that? See?
I should have asked Elaine or Rebecca to order me some, shouldn't I? I'm sitting here, I'm starving hungry. I'll tell you what I've got. They made some cakes. That's all that's left of them.
Ooh.
I've had two of them. Yes. So, yeah, sorry about being late. At least we're back. So, does anybody have a flying question? No, good. Right.
Who's the next available slot?
See you then.
That was a great video on Farnborough airspace all changed then or something.
Yeah, they've got Class D airspace around them now. For the most part, we don't fly round there. But if you do a trip to something like the Isle of Wight and scoot round the western side of the Heathrow zone, then you're straight through Farnborough's airspace.
Right.
But I think we covered it on a ground school the other day.
Yeah, I think we did.
It almost makes no difference to us because we talk to them anyway. We request a zone transit through their ATZ anyway, so it's actually identical. We've already got a score, so it kind of doesn't really change anything as far as we're concerned. I do understand some of the arguments against it. There's some little airfields around there, which means it's a little bit more restrictive for them to fly one another, but it does make it safer.
How long does the medical last, Paul?
Sorry, we'll get back to serious business.
Depends on your age.
Yeah, so whether it's a class 1 or class 2, but generally speaking, I'm trying to remember now, class 2, 5 years if you're under 40 and 2 years if you're over 40. I think it's 60 and onwards, it's 1 year.
Yeah.
I think it's 50 and above it's 1 year, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right, Jonathan.
Oh, great. I've only got a couple of years in.
I'm already at that place. 1 year.
No way. You're
I'm an old man.
Are you, Emberton? No way. Good grief.
Oh, sorry, the other John.
He's 50 last year.
Oh, of course you were. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course you
So
were.
was
Coming
I.
up 51 now.
Yeah.
Cool, mere pups.
Actually, no, I was 50 last year. Yeah. I turned 51 in April.
Yes, that's right. Of course, yeah, because you're in April as well as me, aren't you? Yeah.
I'm April as well.
Anyway, sorry, Imagine.
London for mine, about 4 or 5 hours sitting at Walpole Street.
Yep.
Intensive thing.
It is, yeah, they do prod and poke you, but they don't do any endoencephalograms anymore. Didn't they put any electrodes on your head, did they?
No, I got like the 12 or so points all over my chest, and they did quite an ECG thing.
It's an ECG, yeah, for the heart.
Yeah.
So you got a class 1 medical?
Breath tests, eye tests. What else did they do? I can't remember what else they did. It went on for a long time though. Hearing was a big one. There was a little psychometric one.
Yep.
They ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Make sure you're not insane.
And you go from
That won't work for me.
You go from room to room as well. It's quite sort of, it's all this quite sterile environment. You go through one white door and then another one and all sorts of things. And
There's like 4 or 5 different doctors.
When I did my first class 1, which was obviously a long time ago, they did endoencephalogram. They looked at the rhythms of brain patterns, alpha rhythms in your brain, flicker lights in your face, and all sorts to see if you were susceptible to epileptic fits and strokes and things. But they decided it was inconclusive, so they stopped it. But it was horrible. You used to shut your eyes and you'd open them with the flickering lights and all sorts.
That sounds
like
awful.
torture.
Yeah, it is.
On from last week's quiz with the fuel shut off and engine failure.
Oh, yeah.
And in the operations procedure book, page 337, it says engine failure, shut off the fuel to start with.
This is
But
a
it
very
says
good. Yeah, go on, Sue.
single powered engines only. So I'm wondering if I've learnt stuff for fixed wing and not helicopters.
Well, yes and no. So it depends on which helicopter you're in. This is the strange thing. You can't just purely say it's the same answer for all. It's not always the same as to whether you shut the fuel off, depending on the problem, as it were. Now, one thing I can say, generally speaking, is that if the engine has stopped working, you are always better shutting the fuel off, because the fuel's pointless, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you isolate the fuel in the fuel tank, therefore. But some of the emergency procedures are, for instance, an engine fire in flight, and anybody that's listening that hasn't actually started flying, by the way, this is ever so rare. This literally never happens, but we have to practice it and be prepared for it. So engine fire in flight, depending on which helicopter you're in, depending on what you're doing, this depends whether you actually shut the fuel off. Because if you're going to shut the fuel off, you do enter auto rotation first. As we found. I've got a funny first solo story. I hope somebody doesn't mind me telling it. They're here tonight on Zoom. So picture this: I've got the Cadbury, the first Cadbury, and not one of the first ones in the UK, but there aren't many in the UK. I'm very proud of this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have to send somebody solo in this. Now, of course, it's a bit of an unknown quantity at this point, because you don't know exactly how it's going to react with the student solo sort of thing. But it's good helicopter, and luckily the student that was going to be sent solo is a good steady flight. So I thought, well, I've got one of the best ones here to send solo in it first time round. And so we had the briefing, and they'd been flying some beautiful circuits, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to have to bite the bullet. This is as good a time as any. So we went through the briefing of, I'm going to get out, I'm going to walk away, I'm going to sort of put my vis on and turn around, and we're going to go for it. I'm going to give a thumbs up, you do a radio call and all that jazz. And yep, okay, yep, fully understood. So I get out, I walk away, pretending that I'm very relaxed and I'm putting myself really kind of thing. Walking away, put my stuff down, I turn around, bloody hell, they're already in the hover.
Off you go.
That's it. Off you go around the circuit. Yeah, you did a superb job of it. It was absolutely textbook. Otherwise, you were rock steady, beautiful circuit, lovely approach, and gently back down.
Nice one, Alan.
Yeah, it was good.
Most amazing experience in my life.
So Alan was any metal that touches one another. If you get any rubbing motion, it causes an electrical charge as well as magnetic interference as well. And so, of course, that can, depending on the frequency of the rubbing as well, can cause dreadful interference on the radio, or not at all, of course. It just
procedure to land anywhere you like, or in private land, or do you have to have certain permissions for that?
Yeah, okay. So generally speaking, if you want to land somewhere that's not an airfield, a private land, private property, you need a landowner's permission first of all, as a base. Unless we're landing in the event of a problem of some description, then we can more or less land wherever we like within reason. So if you want to go and visit your friend who happens to have a very big back garden, etc., you just need their permission first of all. And then we need to make sure we've got a nice safe approach in and out. So you can't go and land, if somebody's got a big back garden but they're in the middle of a town or a city, you can't go and land there because it's in amongst the built up area. But if they live on the outskirts, or there's like a bit of a safe approach in and out, so you don't have to fly over people's houses, things, and generally speaking, that's okay. You can get special permission from the CA to land in town centres, but they generally won't allow a single engineer to do that. So in the UK, it's relatively easy to go and visit all these restaurants and pubs and that got bits of land next to them and all those sorts of things. You literally just call them up, get their permission, check you've got a safe approach and departure, and off you go. So it's very easy. Next question. Oh, James, you wanted to ask something, didn't you?
Yes, so I was going to ask you, in terms of gearing yourself up for commercial and the best chance of, so I know it's very tricky to find work as a low hours commercial pilot. How would you recommend utilising hour building, and then the best method to actually find yourself something to try and ease the cost of some of those hours between the 185 commercial and 250 instructor?
Yeah, see, that's a tricky bit, isn't it? It's, you know, you need another 65 hours, don't you, to carry on to be the instructor. Well, initially, what stage you're just about to take your commercial exams, aren't you? Is it next week?
No, I mean, I'm trying to think ahead. I've got 86 hours, but I'm about my next week. Well, remember, I'm taking my first set of ATP.
Right, you're doing your first set, aren't you? Yay, mod
Yeah.
1. Yeah. So hours building towards your commercial course, you really need to make sure your flying is right up there at the top of you know, as good as it can be, to make the course a lot easier. Remember, the commercial course is not going to teach you how to fly a helicopter. You already need to be a very good standard. So between now and going on the commercial flying course, it's well worth every now and then fly with an instructor who's going to push you and make you do all the, you know, really refine your flying, try and hold your height where possible within 50 feet and all those. And then lots of emergencies and all the difficult maneuvers you wouldn't normally be allowed to practice. If you've learnt in an R22, this even stems back from your PPL. If you learn to fly an R22, you can't go and fly an R44 until you've done a conversion course. But the course is not too difficult. It depends on the helicopter. It can be sometimes as little as 3 days, sometimes, you know, 5 days or more, depending on the complexity of the aircraft, and then a simple flight test at the end of it. And you then have that rating on your license. So generally speaking, it's 3 to 5 days in the classroom with some theoretical knowledge and that sort of stuff, 5 hours in the helicopter, and then a skills test in the aircraft at the end of it.
I'm kind of in a roundabout way going to ask a question because I know Alan wants to fly it. Is that right, Alan? You want to fly the Bell, don't you? But I just thought it might be quite cool for, you know, if we could go with you to one of us fly one way and one fly the other to kind of.
Yeah, not a problem at all. So we're okay with. They haven't said anything about you've all got to come from the same household or anything like that. It's more about how are we going to protect one another in the cockpit in a confined space. So we have, like I say, we have, first of all, you can't come in the flying school with all your friends and family and all the rest of it. No, it can only be you, for instance. We're taking temperatures and checking. You do your medical declaration, which I don't know if you've done it already. I think Alan's done yours, haven't you? If I'm rightly.
Yeah, I haven't sent mine in yet.
Yeah, send that in. So we've got that in place. We're taking temperatures when people come in, and obviously checking that they're feeling well. Say buckets of hand gel, all that kind of stuff as well. And then making sure everybody wears their face covering in the cockpit, reminding people that the face covering doesn't protect you, it protects the other person from you.
How much more complicated is the Bell to fly than the R44?
Not massively more complicated. One of the nice things about the 206 is it is very similar to an R44 in some ways, in that they feel quite similar to fly. They share the same hydraulic system, which is quite handy. So if you know the hydraulics in the R44, you know the 206 to a large degree. The only kind of, the slightly more complex thing is the engine being the turbine engine. You just need to know a bit more about that, and possibly the weight and balance, because you've got the variable. You could be flying it by yourself, so one person, or you could have 5 people on board with luggage. What we call a shift or a weight and balance shift. But what's nice about it is it's not a complicated aircraft. It's relatively simple, which is very good. If you've never flown a helicopter before, you wouldn't know any different. But Robinsons are very unique with their cyclic. It's a T-bar arrangement that not everybody gets on with, especially if they've flown a conventional helicopter in the first instance. But yeah, no. So the 206, yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, it's good. It's a relatively easy type rating. It's not too complicated. It's very stable and steady. So yeah, it's nice and smooth, pretty quick, and yeah, you can take with your friends on board.
But we're forgetting the main point, that the 206 is a gorgeous aircraft.
It is,
much
yeah.
better than R66.
Yeah,
It looks like a proper
It
helicopter.
looks better.
It looks like a proper helicopter. Yeah,
It looks like the archetypical helicopter, I always think.
it does.
You
Yeah.
think of helicopters, you think of the Jet Ranger.
Everybody thinks of the Jet Ranger shape. I think over the years, because they don't make them, there's fewer of them around. It's starting to be more like a squirrel shape, you know, a single or three.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you know, we've had it before on a trial lesson. You walk down to the helipad. You've got you've got a Jet Ranger parked on the helipad, and then you've got an R22 parked on the helipad. They all start walking towards the Jet Ranger like, no, we're in this one.
Yeah, that happened to me. I remember that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and they're like, really? Can we fit in it? Yeah, we'll be fine. Can't we
That
go?
was-
I mean, I've
Davis is
literally got a
That's the-
Bell calendar. It's heli
Yeah.
porn. That's what it is.
It's that classic shape, isn't it? Yeah, it's got a nice pointy nose on it and the stuff. Yeah, yeah. And it's nice, big. You know, you stand next to a Jet Ranger and it looks impressive. It's big, and yeah, and you feel like you're in something big and strong and a proper helicopter. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
I am really wrestling with the idea of paying for an hour. It's an internal struggle.
You've
I'm
got to
thinking of
do it.
celebrating my 100 hour with actually coming up and doing it.
Come and do it. Yeah, you won't regret it. It's a
No, I
lovely
sincerely
like
doubt
so
I'll regret
iconic. And you got it in your logbook then, and yeah.
Hour 100 is going to be in the Bell.
No problem. We'll make it a date. Yep, I think I've just
Yeah, I just wanted to ask. You done the France tour normally with 2 helicopters? Or,
we had to postpone it because of lockdown, so that will push back. That'll either be later in this year or next year now.
how does that work, Paul?
So I was going to give the funny answer. We get in a helicopter and we just fly across to France. Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, do you take some of your students with you, or do we take external people from that context?
Generally speaking, it can be students, or we call them self-fly hire. Somebody that's passed who flies a helicopter is known as a self-fly hirer. So you could be a student, you could be a self-fly hirer. Normally, the only requirement we want is that you can actually fly the thing vaguely straight and level, and we'll point it in the right direction for you. With the instructor course, you know, so many people have gone on an instructor course and are an okay standard, but they're not at the standard you need. You know, you're now, forgive the terminology, you're hurling a helicopter on the sky in all configurations, and you've got to let somebody else do that and be in control of it the whole time whilst letting them have a go of it. So you've got to be really on top of your game with flying on the instructor course, especially because you've got to have that confidence and ability to let somebody have a go of it that's never flown it before.
Yes.
And know when to jump in.
But you've got to give them enough control so that they're having a go, otherwise they'll never let. See, when you look at the examiner form, it does actually say that you need to have demonstrated God, I'm trying to think of the wording. It might say a full down auto rotation to the ground without power recovery. So what they do, the examiners do on your PPL skills test, is they do the auto rotation from final approach 750, for instance, to the power recovery. And of course, they do the engine off in the hover, and that kind of qualifies for an engine off landing to the ground.
Yeah, we did do that.
Yeah,
We did engine off in the hover immediately after the simulated engine off landing.
yeah, and so they kind of loosely tie the two together to say, well, effectively you've done it to the ground, so therefore that's a tick in the box, and that's a sensible thing to do. That is the right thing to do. But yeah, as far as it'd be good. Let's think.
50%.
Right, what's the minimum rotor RPM in the Cadbury in auto rotation?
60%.
In the Cadbury.
Do you mean how low it can go before recovery, or the one that you're supposed to never
The red
go
line.
before?
So what's the one that you're kind of taught that really you shouldn't exceed, i.e. the lower red line? It's in the Cadbury. There's 450 RPM. So 530 RPM is its nominal value, and 450 is its red line. Now, how low can it go?
About 350, can't it?
Possibly lower. I'm not going to explore the very bottom end of that scale, okay? If you stall the rotors, that's obviously bad news. But in the hover, James, for instance, the Cadbury, you can still hover them at 350 RPM. Now, bearing in mind 530 is its normal RPM, you're heading down towards about, as Jonathan said, 60% of its rotor RPM, and it will still fly in the hover. So that means in auto rotation, theoretically, it can get much lower. So whilst the red line is at 450, it will go quite a lot lower. I only know a 92 can be recovered at 72% because a student one day just closed the throttle on me when we're flying along.
All right. Luckily you were higher.
So James, this is why you need to be pretty good at flying to be an instructor, because you know things happen sometimes, and you just have to take it in your stride. Yeah, I had a student. This was up at Cranfield. This is back in the early days. and we're doing emergencies, and I said to them, practice engine failure, 3, 2, 1, go, and nothing happened. Oh, you probably haven't heard me. I'll do it again. Practice engine failure, 3, 2, 1, nothing. So I had a little chat with them, sort of said, obviously you realise if this was for real, this is really quite bad now. Oh, yeah, sorry, Paul, yeah. All right, okay. So practice engine failure, 3, 2, 1, go, and they just cut the throttle on me. And this is back when there was still the slimmer blades. I'm like, whoa, it's like. So it's a rather positive flare. Down
How high were you at the time?
1,000 feet. And I'm watching the rotor RPM needle plummet like this. And there he comes. Thank God for that. Yeah, so I know it will go down to 72% in the R22. With the 44s, will go down to 55%. They're really good.
Wow.
Yeah. Do we have Birgit back with us, Paul?
Hey, yep, she's out of quarantine.
Yay.
She was fine, but she'd cycle it purely to hold the disc parallel with the horizon so you don't suffer dynamic rollover. You actually control the roll with a collective lever.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yes, but the answer they want is with the cyclic. You think?
Oh, they want with the cyclic.
Hang on. See, the question is not specific enough. They don't tell you what stage of flight you're in within a sloping ground.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on whether the skid's in the air or whether something
Exactly. So
comes
the
up with the ground.
assumption is because they say sloping ground landing, you immediately think, well, clearly you're touching the ground. You're trying to land the helicopter. Therefore, you're controlling roll probably with a collective, because it does control the roll at that point, not the cyclic. You shouldn't try and control the roll with the cyclic. You only stop it rolling over. Therefore, the answer would be collective lever, but they want cyclic. And the explanation in the Bristol exams, I think it's in the Bristol exams, it's like, this is a very poorly worded question, and whilst one definitely argues it is the collective, they actually want the cyclic as the answer. There was for the nine theory tests you do for your PPL to take the license, would I recommend studying the practice questions after each section? Yes, definitely. There are, Sue and I discovered there was it with you, Sue? There are some errors. There's always errors, unfortunately. In all of these practice papers, there's usually some errors. So you have to be careful, otherwise you teach yourself the wrong thing. And this is another reason why we say your depth of knowledge is far more important than your ability to memorize the answers to questions. Because if you just memorize answers to question banks, you stand a chance of getting them wrong for a start off, because they often have errors in them. The depth of your knowledge is far more important, certainly in my view, than you purely getting more than 75% in a test. So I'm really sorry, one of my pet hates is somebody that goes off and does one of these intensive 5-day courses to pass the PPL exams, because they pass the exams and then I ask them a simple question, they can't answer it because they don't know how they got to the answer. The depth of knowledge is terrible. I'd rather you have a good depth of knowledge, you know what you're talking about, but you're struggling with the exams because you just can't interpret the wording very well. I'd rather you be able to explain it all to me, but you're just not sure on the question itself because of the way it's worded.
And what I've done in the past is, if I've got the question wrong according to Pooley's bank and haven't understood why, I brought it up with yourself or Bishop, and that's how you can discover perhaps you were right and they were wrong.
Yeah, see, a student the other day who's learned to fly. Paul, is this right? They've asked me this question, emailed it to me, and they've kind of given their explanation as to why they think they're right, and the question is wrong. And it's true. The answer to the question is incorrect. And they've actually, they've gone through it. They've said, look, this is why I think it's right, and it's totally correct. But if they just memorised an answer, they'd actually get it wrong in the exam, because the exam papers are all correct. We've been through them with a fine-tooth comb. For the exam, gravity reduced without, the answer is yes. However,
it's ridiculous. Nuts in wagon done.
All right, so an interesting question as well. Here's a principles of flight one for you. I'll try and word it correctly how the CA have got it worded.
Sorry, Paul, I just can't get past this bit about gravity.
It's a genuine question.
Right.
Helicopters cannot, hang on a second, helicopters cannot, there is no helicopter power enough to escape the Earth's gravitational pull.
Right.
So the question is entirely hypothetical.
Yes, exactly. Of course it is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it's hypothetical.
But it's still the answer. Yeah? Oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
Because
it's just,
you mustn't think altitude is just simply 2,500 feet or 10,000 feet. You've got to think altitude is up.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it probably does actually get a bit less. I mean, like microscopically less.
Therefore, the answer
Activity.
is yes, it does. It
Yeah.
might be microsecond of August.
Is that when the open day is?
So I've been reliably informed by Sue. Yeah, at least she knows what's going on. Flying it. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody, for attending.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Always very enjoyable.
No problem at all. No, it's nice to. I like having the full range from people that have never even sat in a helicopter before to somebody that's going on for commercials, for instance, and got their license. Yeah, it's nice because
I'm still desperately inexperienced.
and if you always stay open-minded like that, you'll be amazed what you can learn. You just keep picking up every day's a school day. We learn something new. I just flew with somebody today in the cavalry who's got a license and didn't know the button on top of the cyclic swaps the frequencies over on the radio. They'd never been shown that before.
That button's the life.
Yeah. So they were delighted. They couldn't believe it. They'd learned that. Like, wow, I never knew that. I said, and better than that, if you press and hold it, it defaults to 121.50.
What?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I always pitch forward every time. I'm so short. I pitch forward every time I change the damn radio channel.
Yeah, so you need to learn techniques to control that then, James.
I do need. It's one of the things that I need to get better at.
Yep, there we go. No worries. That's something that can easily be taught. No problems at all. That's easy. That's easy to deal with. Yeah, because you're poor paying passengers. Otherwise, you're going to make them throw up in the back.
Turbulence. Blame it all on the turbulence.
Blame it on the turbulence. That's it. Whoop, there's a bit more.
Oh, a bit bumpy there. Oh, it must have been an air pocket.
Brilliant. Well,
the old air pocket trick. I like that one. Yeah, that works every time.
Stay safe. Stay COVID free. Otherwise, you won't be allowed in the flying school, I'm afraid. And and I hope to see you all properly in the flesh real soon.
Lovely, thanks, Paul.
Thanks,
Paul.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye.